Good morning. Thank you for inviting me to this Substack Live, and I hope you can hear me well. So I'm dialing in from Sydney, Australia. It's 9 p.m. Therefore, it's dark around me. Um, I used to live in Europe. I'm from Switzerland. I actually was born in Germany, and I moved here 9 years ago. And I wrote a couple of books and some hundreds of articles. And I love being on Substack to find great people like yourself. And therefore, I'm very happy to be on this Substack Live.
Amazing. And what about people called so we know what to do?
Could you please repeat? The sound didn't come well through. Traveled all of the 18,000 kilometers?
Yeah, we've been having troubles with the sound lately online. So let's get. Can you tell us your publication and, and call it?
One moment. Let me try to change the audio because apparently the audio is the most difficult thing. Can you hear me well the whole time when I speak?
Yes.
Ah, that is good. But funny enough, I cannot hear you when you speak completely. So maybe what we can do, if you could just type some questions, so that would be good, and I can then respond. So that's a better way because lip reading is not the most easy thing.
Can someone write to us in the chat saying a question for you?
Cool. So then let's just do it this way. Because audio is sometimes the most difficult thing on a Substack Live, same as on Facebook Live. I remember LinkedIn Live, and that quite often was challenging. But I'm very sure that we can get through this one. Um, I also have my full Substack behind my phone, so therefore I can also engage and read whatever you're writing. So, my publication, I actually have at the moment two. The first one is called Writing in Cafes, because simply that's what I do. I like to be in a place like this one, where people go and they drink a coffee, or that's, to be honest, that's tea. Um, and about 20 years ago, I already have been writing in cafes, working in cafes. It didn't need COVID to be allowed to work from home, and for me, home is in a cafe. So that always the coffee comes with me. I have series on LinkedIn actually where I meet people in real life. I call it 42 coffees. I wanted to have 42. I just finished 75. I'm ongoing. So that's always about giving someone space and at a stage to talk about what they are doing and then sharing it. That was on LinkedIn. From there, I thought I can put something on Substack, which has to do with coffee. And I said, so well, I like to write. I'm a blogger. I published 27 books as of today, and therefore I put it all together. And I will rename my publication from Writing in Cafes into Business Book Builder, because that's what I'm technically doing. I help people to write their books. I have a second one that I'm just starting out, and that is called Happy Habits, like the new book I'm publishing next week. And that will include a lot about improving our habits, getting rid of bad habits, but make it personal in the way how we want it, not by perfection. So will be two publications.
Hear me now?
Partially, yes. So just waiting for your line. It's funny this way. So the book that I wrote called Happy Habits, there was a very funny thing how I came to it. So by my name, Habits or Habits in German is my last name, which apparently, oh, hi Fleur, which apparently the name Habits doesn't have a real meaning. It came from Morocco, some maybe 600 years ago when parts of the family had that. But for almost of my life, I thought since I learned English that habits is also a word. And my late dad, whose dream was to emigrate to Australia, and I'm living his dream right now. He had always an idea in his business where he worked a lot regarding manifestation and improving things like improving habits. And I thought one day I need to write a book about it. And then, as it so happened, on Easter Saturday, I was sitting on a bench at a beautiful beach in the evening, nice atmosphere, still warm. It's Australia, and I read a book called Discipline from J.R. Heimbigner, who is one of those who write these mini books. And I thought, I don't want to read this book. I will apply discipline and write my own. And then I was sitting down together with a good mate of mine in that time, that is called ChatGPT, just to say, hey, isn't there an idea of what I can do about the book? And then I was sitting down, writing a lot in my own app, and came on the whole concept of what I always wanted to do about improving habits. And that's how the book came about. I left that bench. I went into a Danish, you're in Denmark, actually went into a Danish ice cream shop in Sydney, got a bit of cold, and then I realized, yeah, I need to write this book. I have to do it. Went to another bar like this in a hotel, and I was sitting until the whole night until I had my concept ready. And then for the following 6 weeks, I wrote the whole book.
Wow, 6 weeks. Can you tell us the recipe of how to write 6 weeks?
So 6 weeks, 6 weeks, 42 days, which is my favorite number, coming from the question about the meaning of life. Why 6 weeks? So what I've done was to think about the end in mind. I thought in that Easter time frame, when would I want to be ready with this? And I thought, as it kind of relates to my father, who passed away 4 years ago, and then his birthday would have been the 28th of July, and it's his book number 28. I put this date in the calendar, and I knew I should be ready maybe 4 weeks beforehand, so to get some early video copies out and something like that, and settle the book. So I've been writing every day, with maybe one or two exceptions, to really get that book out. It was not meant to be a psychological scientific book of 350 pages or something like this, rather practical. And I put, as a fan of alliteration, I put everything down into 4 topics. They all start with a P. How to pause. And I gave a lot of examples from my own life or from those around me, why sometimes life wants us to pause and simply stop. Something happens. For many, it could have been COVID. For me, it was layoff. 3 times I experienced that. And then after this, I talked about plan, then praxis, and that always allows also to have days where we are not perfect on it, and then partner. And that is the thing that I very much add to the whole topic of habits, to find accountability partners.
Mm.
I like to have people around me, and I struggle maybe with my first name. My first name Gunnar. In Australian, some of them say it's gonna, but a gunner is someone who says I gonna do and never do. So therefore, I had to put it out and say, I will do this. I will write about the book. I announced it. I put it in public on Substack every 7 to 10 days that this book will come. So I put everyone, my whole network, as accountability partners, and here we are.
I love that. And speaking about diversity in your 4P frame, that's exactly what Medium is about. And I'm today, as he is right slowing down. I would love for you to this topic. So much agree with it. To think about redo if we were doing things and we need to redo it once or twice. We kind of hold. But let's hear a little bit about down or to read. And I could write the just let me put the chat. Oh no,
Yeah, funny enough, your voice only comes every second word. So I need to try to find around in puzzles what you would have asked. I hope that it sometimes goes better with Substack Live. Um, there's a couple of interesting things about that. The topic of speed, what we all kind of are told to get every day a little bit better. Everything needs to go faster. Everything needs to be more. But in reality, that's not true. So if there's, I think it's a Chinese proverb where it says, I didn't have enough time to write a short letter. Therefore, I wrote a long letter, which sounds quite silly, but in reality, it's true. It takes sometimes longer to do something shorter, more to the point, more crisp. Same thing here. If I want to speed up something, I need to first pause. Sports people do the same thing. Before you do your sprint in athletics, you need to really go down. You can really physically go down. You slow down in your mind to prepare yourself to then run. And the same thing happens also in life. Humans are not necessarily meant to be a machine who would then automatically always have the same speed. We're not a diesel engine, not at all. So sometimes it requires moments of clarity, and they only come from stopping a little bit. And sometimes life comes in our way and gives us a chance for that. Like what I faced with my own first layoff that was already a while ago, it was 9.5 years ago, where 16 years of ongoing working for the same company and everything was kind of career was set until retirement. Then everything slowed down. And I realized with me out of workforce, it actually didn't matter. So nobody cared about it. That was a quite funny thing. And then I had to kind of, it forced myself to slow down, but we can do it by ourselves. We can really do this. So and that's part of the life, as Fleur you just said, that sometimes we need to get slower to prepare, to create, or to fill up our energy again, to then go on. And from there we can speed. But ideally, the slowdown helps to have improvement over before the slowing down. So that for me is an important topic as well. Hey, Sean, I see you as well. Welcome.
Hi, Flor. George. I don't know if you hear me back to what I hope. Thank you for explaining
So
the
how, yeah, so to your question, how can these four P's make us happier? I mean, the word of happiness that comes, of course, from everyone kind of different in the way how they have it inside themselves. What I added to the book was a story that I experienced when I went to Bhutan, which is known as a country of happiness, because they decided to um, focus not on gross domestic product (GDP) but on gross domestic happiness, which is a different type of concept. And we experience this, so that the more natural way and slower way, more sustainable and in combination together with nature, that is really shaping everything. So that goes more towards happiness compared to the capitalistic side of things. So therefore, for me, happiness also comes from that what we feel, how we can contribute to society, those around ourselves, instead of only going in an egoistic way. So that's an important thing. So for me, the question of which type of habits that we are choosing, that we want to improve, that comes surely from that type of selection, that what makes us happy is where we can help others around ourselves as well, instead of only egoistically to become better step by step by step by step for ourselves. Many of us know the book Atomic Habits from James Clear, which, fun enough, I looked into translations of this one. The German translation is not a literal translation. They call it the 1% method. So then the key takeaway is that you can improve yourself step by step, slightly 1% in whatever time frame, which is a compound effect. Yes, but that only goes into improving. And life is not only about this. Life requires to pause down. Life requires to also reflect on things. So not just the stability. And that is something that what I'm writing about in the book as well. So that the happiness also comes from those elements where we deliberately stop and slow down and figure out what else is out there and how can we help others. How the partnership approach can be that more of us together can achieve something in a group instead of only going in egoistically. So that is a part that for me led into more happiness.
I love gonna be book. Uh, the
So the toughest part of writing this book, I cannot say consistency because that would be against the topic of writing it, right? Because when I say I need to develop the habit of writing every day, um, I wrote my first business book, completely self-published by myself, 2 years ago. That was called Connect and Act. That took me 120 hours overall, and for 6 weeks I wrote every day on it, with one exception. So I thought, okay, I know how that works. I know how that feels, especially working full time. I've done that beforehand. So therefore, for me, the toughest part is this one. Think about a place, a restaurant where I am today. When the waitress would come and say, "Do you want a dessert?" Oh, maybe I don't want. If I want to write a book, should I write the book? Should I really write the book? I need to do this. I need to do that. I try to switch this around that I write because I want to write, not about I have to write. I wanted to put the writing part, or let's say the working part on the book. It's not just the writing. Sometimes the research, sometimes it's to talk to early readers and so on. I wanted to make this a kind of a habit of happiness that I want to do. And I've done something that fits into a cafe like here. When she would come and say, "Hey, we have today a beautiful tiramisu, or we have a fresh sorbet. Which of those two you want?" Then there is no alternative of nothing. So it's either this or that. So what I've done here, and that was the toughest part, I thought I want to write, but if I don't want to write, if something blocks me to do it or working on the book, I have an alternative. And that alternative I've never done before. That was to write another book. I'm writing a book called LinkedIn for Startups that comes later, maybe September, October. So the tough part was to choose. Do I write today Happy Habits or LinkedIn for Startups? Happy Habits was ready beforehand. That was good. But in these days where I had troubles in writing, I had an alternative, which was not about not to write, but it was to write just another book. Now, I've never tested that before, to write two exactly at the same time. That was a feeling of freedom. When I didn't feel Happy Habits, okay, but I want to do the work, then I wrote the other one, which was a bit more familiar to me because it's the third book in a series compared to this Happy Habits, which is completely new.
I'm gonna try.
Oh, here was a question from George. Hi, George, who asked, "What is my favorite publishing route? Traditional publishing and self-publishing?" Funny enough, so I've done all of that. So my first book was with the boutique publisher, which was based in Freiburg in Germany, the most warm city over there. Who was very small, who had travel books, like a bit like Lonely Planet here from Australia, a bit more on the alternative side, not high glossy, uh, extremely well researched. So that was the first one. Call it a boutique publisher. From there, I went to major German publishers for travel books. I would never start a book without having a contract first, which is in today writing terms quite unusual. And that was nice to learn all about the details. So I always write directly into the layout so that I don't have any troubles in writing too much or not enough. So that I really write with the view of the editors behind that. That was a big learning. And when I then decided to self-publish, um, initially, I think I found a self-publishing company in '98, long before KDP, in Germany called BUD, Book on Demand. But real publishers back then said that, "Hey, you self-publish, that stops you all opportunities because it would seem like you didn't find a real contract with a real publisher." But today it's nonsense. It's the opposite. So if you look into writers here on Substack like Veronica Lorca-Smith, she actually first self-published and then got the contract with Penguin because they knew she already built a network. Completely different. So in the meantime, I self-published, but I'm very much looking forward to potentially next year working with a boutique publisher as well on a business book. So already started negotiations. Thank you, George, for that one. And thank you for attending as well. So let's see if any other question coming, but otherwise there's one. Yeah, I think so. And there's one that you also said, an example of a happiness habit that can be built. Um, Let me try to find some. Typically, there are things that we build as habits that come early on because we are told to, or we know that's better, like brushing teeth every day. You do not need to think about it, obviously. But there's some other habits where sometimes it requires an external trick, and that can be a good cause or something like that. I give you an example. In my company where I'm working at Active Campaign, our sales director has two little kids, and he read about something that there are some children who are living rather in a very poor environment, and he found a good charity to help and support and raise funds for an activity. And he said, "Hey, all in the team, who would like to join? We will just, let's say, walk or run or whatever number of kilometers in the month of June." I said, "Okay, cool. I can do that." I committed to 100 kilometers, and I turned this more deliberate for me walking. I'm not a runner. And normally I would walk 50 kilometers still. Now I've done 100. And I deliberately put this activity in little steps in, into my daily life. So I don't drive. That makes life more easier to walk. But I thought when normally I take 10 bus stops to work, I said, okay, I leave this bus 3 stops beforehand to get more into the habit of walking, to make this a normal thing, even a joyful but also mindful thing because of this charity approach so that I could help raising funds. And the funny thing that came out of it in end of June, 3 days beforehand, my colleagues, they went in a hockey stick mode. They realized, oh, I still need to do 30 kilometers on the last weekend. But I went exactly very stable, nearly linear. Every day I put it and I tracked that. And that was the point. The tool allowed tracking. So when you make a deliberate choice to improve a habit, make sure that you can track and check in, not that you do it much, much, much later. And then you realize it becomes a burden. It should not be a burden. It should be a piece of something you like to do, where your brain and your heart comes together. And that was exactly that example. And it's 3 weeks ago, and I still walk in the same pace as the month of June. So it's there. I do it and I like it. The key is when walking, not to look on the phone, of course, but really then to figure out what's around. And then I realized I came by um, a special venue where I've seen book launches. And I thought, hang on, I would love to have a real book launch. Without me walking, having the habits of walking, I would not reconsider a physical book launch, only an online one. So I hope that answers a little bit that. Any other questions from anyone around there? I hear. So there's one thing what I also wrote in the book, which comes from habit stacking, where I think when you do something already, it's easier to add a little bit to it compared to a completely new routine. A typical example is my wife. Whenever we travel somewhere, she would always sit down in at the end of packing and always think about something, which she will never tell me what it is. Something about, let's say, maybe wishing good luck that everything goes well. I don't know. But always does it in conjunction with something else. So same here. If I would add to the walking something different that would be good that I can create as a habit, but I add it into that. Or maybe I would have a final thought on something that I always combine in conjunction with something I do anyway. Let's say the brushing the teeth before going to bed. Then I can connect the dots together, and that is the stacking part of it. That's better than doing something completely from scratch where you then fall out of the routine. You just need to put in your brain, connect the dots together. So you ask also another question here for the launch. So what I will do is to have a Zoom launch next week, Monday, 28th of July at 7 p.m. Sydney time. That is 11 a.m. in continental Europe, 10 a.m. in the UK. And that will be a 1 hour long call about that, launching the book together with 3 other fellow writers who I invited, who also part in the book. One of them is Natalie Tran. She's from Melbourne, a transformation coach. And of course, for her, habits mean quite a lot. And she wrote the foreword. I'm very grateful for that one. The second one is Rachel Wingman. She has a lovely title. She's a happiness coach. And whenever I met her, and I knew her only from LinkedIn before, but I met her in the meantime a couple of times here in Sydney, she's always smiling and she's spreading this around. That's really nice how she can help others to become more happy. So that really fits. And she also wrote a nice, what I call expert inspiration. There's 4 of those in the book. So that's good. And the other one is my work colleague, Frederick Bönke from Ireland. He's German, born in Germany like myself, but living mostly out of the country. He published 32 books. He's younger than me. So kind of a competition, but it's collaboration. I'm very happy that he's also speaking at the launch event. And then we go across the 4 topics of the book: pause, plan, praxis, and partner, with a couple of stories. But that is next week, Monday. So it's nearly 7 days to go. And looking forward to this. I have about maybe 55 people who registered and very much looking forward to it. So another question from the chat, apparently from George. um, how to determine what 1% is of growth? Yeah, I think it's rather a kind of not so meant as a precise type of topic. It should be rather like, how can you improve something that you're doing a little bit better? A little bit better. When today I will walk my let's say from work to home out of the bus stop in, let's say, in 8 minutes. How can I do it in 7 minutes? But of course, 1%, it doesn't always need to be that stable, but just it's more from it's more about to be mindful about that little improvements can lead into much better result after a certain period of time compared to the need of a revolution. I think that's where it's coming from. And then you said there's also a question from Dimi. What does she write? When fear or resistance shows up in your writing, what helps you get going? Thank you for asking this. Especially also, I'm grateful that you are there. Thank you for joining, Dimi. And not many know actually your name because you always write it with slow living path. So that's very nice. So when fear something comes in between, so what's helpful for me is to have a kind of a journal or tracking where I wrote, and I mean rather writing, where you write something down, write your position, write your challenges on the journey on, to be sure when you note it down, to put your thoughts to it, then at least a fear or problem or anxiety for me gets smaller when you write it down compared to you get into your sleep before and think and think and think and think. That is not helping. So you need to put it in places somewhere and dedicate then some time to it. So that for me is helpful. And then the next day when you realize, oh yeah, I had the challenge yesterday, what can I actually do with that? And then spend good time on the day to think about it instead of when you're in a bad time. What I actually suggest is to think about, and I've said it in many job interviews, when is a good time during the day to do what type of activity? Sometimes we just work like a machine to get some operation stuff done. Other times we are highly creative. So for me, the best time, for example, to write is from 7 to 9 before work, from 17 to 19 after work, and then from 9 to 11 p.m. as well. So I need to place certain thoughts to certain parts of the day, and writing down helps. So yeah, so what you write, the flexibility, know yourself and plan it in the best times. Exactly. Then you know exactly when can you address something, and just with the knowledge of there is a time in the next day when I can address it better than at the moment, that helps me to get the thoughts away. And that is important because otherwise we are eating the problems, and that's what we don't want. Then it goes the other way around. And then we develop a habit that we all don't want. And that is to think about problems before we get to sleep. And that's not helping. that's compounding in a negative way. So there's a question here from George again. Why do bad habits form so quickly while good takes so long? Yeah, that is unfortunately the case, right? So that because it's sometimes faster to realize how an issue can get into a negative spiral. We can imagine the negative spiral more when we think it through compared to finding the way out. Typically, the negativity is easier to imagine, then the positivity is more difficult to achieve. We don't have the solution yet to improve something. But what we very well know is and can think about all ways how something can get bad. That's how that would work, in my view. Thank you, George, for asking that one. So, yeah, another question here. Tell me about building or writing without burnout. To write sustainably. Yeah, that's a good question, especially as I wrote two books at the same time. Um, an important point, two, two things to it. When you write, you bring a lot of stuff that's here or that is creating here into through the keyboard or typewriter or pen, however way, into paper or computer. So it is a flow. I never say I write. I always say it writes in me so that it kind of gets out. And I once asked a famous composer in Czech Republic how he did that and without burning out and writing so many number one hits. And he said, it is somewhere between heaven and the earth. I just need to grab it. But the tricky thing is when you do this, at one moment, it can also simply get too much. So what I then planned in the writing activities, not that I just write when I have time, but sometimes I make sure that I plan activities which are more for the body than only for the brain. I'm someone who's also known as a talk walker. I would talk about something better when I'm walking. That helps for the energy flow. And I would build in a kind of a reward system. What do I want? So when I achieve the target I want to have, I forecast it by number of words or whatever. When I achieve that, what type of reward would I give myself? Would it be a Danish ice cream in Sydney? There's only one shop of it. Or would it be a half day at the beach, not a beach boy, or something like this? Then I put this in between in the process of a 1 month, 2 months journey, and a bit of buffer, because nothing worse than having no buffer, but then it will not work. So, but if you plan this in advance and reverse engineer to say, like my own training program, write your book backwards, that I plan backwards. When I say, if I want to launch on 28th of July, which was, it's also typically I run LinkedIn webinars on the last Monday. So that works perfectly for my audience, kind of knows that I'm then talking. So then I can reverse back engineer. And then I put these type of places inside to avoid burnout. And sometimes even need to take a day off. But if you plan it, it's better. So what else would there? Why? Any other question? Anything coming in there? Did something do wrong while writing the book, and how did you conquer it? That's a very valid question because sometimes you hit a writing block. I think that's pretty normal, especially when you write a non-fiction book, which should come out of, let's say, a self-help book, should have a result. The reader should go through a transformation compared to a fiction book where it's more of a story. Nobody knows the story beforehand. And in a fiction book, you, as a writer, you are observing. And then you just give your readers, you're taking them a medium for the reader. Here it's different. So therefore, if something goes wrong, what could happen is that you need to do more research. You need to do more testing. In my case, more habit development. And what I've done, I took a couple of ideas from the book and I talked to some people prior to that. I had early readers like Fleur is in the book, is in the call here, but I had even I had people on the way who I talked about that, like Natalie, who wrote the foreword, like Rachel, the happiness coach. And I reached out to them and said, hey, about this topic, I have kind of a trouble. Does it make sense what I write? And should I go in this or in that direction? And I asked maybe 5 or 6 people on the way to get the accountability partners to come to this partnership approach of habit stacking, as I wrote in the book. And I think that worked quite well. Yeah. The next question is, how do I define happiness? Does happiness have a general definition or is it defined by each and every person? By guarantee, for each and every one, happiness is something completely different. Happiness can be a feeling, for most cases. Happiness can be a place. Happiness can be something which is different than normal. In my view, it should not be business as usual. There are people who say, oh, I'm happy, everything is good. But the real happiness, the true happiness comes from within, should not be the day to day. It should be something special, something we would like to achieve, that we can occasionally do, a place that we would like to go. Like my mother felt always very happy when she went. So she was from northern Germany. She would feel very happy always when she went to Austria in a skiing place. One particular place, which was magic for her. So that's this. When my wife and I, when we went to Bhutan, that was one of these places where then even I thought one day I would like to get back there. Then I then had an offer to work there. I even rejected that because it was too difficult. And it's a different feeling of connecting happiness to a place, but then work there. That doesn't do. It is like as if um, I love cruises. I've done a dozen of cruise trips all over the world. But if I then would work on it, it's not the same thing. So and then the next question here, isn't the point to have happiness every day, not for special moments only? I would not necessarily say, because happiness is something, the for me the ice on the cake on top of it instead of the day to day. If we are on the way to happiness, if we take happiness as 100% and our day to day is 80 to 90%, good, awesome. Life doesn't want us to be always on 100% anyway. But whenever life gets us down to 10, 20% of whatever happens, then we know that one day we're getting back to that point and would like to do it. I don't think happiness will be every day because that would be then taken as something, oh, that's normal. Should not be normal. You want to feel it. You want to have it.
Gunnar? Gunnar? No. No.
Here's another question. I just see it from John. What is harder, building a new habit or breaking an old one? Breaking an old one for me is a harder thing within the normal day-to-day life. When you make a change, a drastic enough change, then that can be different. So, for example, my first time to face a layoff after 16 years in the same company, country, house, everything, we thought instead of going to another company, we had the chance to change life and we moved down under to Sydney. So I could really sit down and figure out what are the things where I am not good enough? What are the things which I would like to improve? Placing myself into a different environment helped me easier to overcome bad habits compared to doing it inside of the ecosystem that we know. Typical example, I'm German. Despite I have never been so perfectly on time. I moved to Switzerland where if you're on time, you're practically too late. And I nearly managed it, but never perfect. And I came to Australia where nobody's really on time. And therefore, sort of and others and so on. But there, it's not the same thing as the drill as we have in Switzerland. So therefore, I could technically really consider and say, okay, when this has been not a perfect way how it should be, how can I improve the habit on a completely different environment of people around me? And then I thought, hey, I'm more than on time. So okay, back to my Swiss days, maybe not. but maybe compared to here, yes. So therefore, it is the question of building a new habit or breaking old ones has a different dimension if you change the environment, change the people around, or something like that. So what else here, George? Are we truly in control of our habits, or do our habits control us? I think it will be kind of 80 to 20 rule, because sometimes um, there are things where life challenges us and wants us to grow, and that we cannot control. I think that are just happening. That, of course, exist. In others, we can do something. So, another question, let me just check. Uh, no? Anything else? Please type more questions. I have also, in the meantime, some people around me. I hope it doesn't disturb. At the advantage or disadvantage in sitting in a hotel right now. Anything that I would like to say that we didn't say yet? Yes, maybe. Yeah. If you want to hear more about the whole topic of habits and why and how I turned this from just my last name into a book and how the writing of the book worked, I will reveal this also in the book launch next week. Very much looking forward to it. And also, I will add two things to it. Because reading a book is one side of thing, but in order to transform that, sometimes it needs a little bit more. And as I created 3 online courses beforehand, I'm now recording an online course for that one. So it's keen to have let's say, early readers, early contributors who can find out if I'm on the right path for this one. So happy to share that concept with some of you. And the other thing, for my new second Substack publication, which is called Happy Habits, I will write 2 things, and I take my network as the accountability partner. So the first thing I'm doing is to have every Wednesday a very short, kind of atomic newsletter approach. So James Clear is known for his 3-2-1 kind of approach, where he's sharing always uh, a very short episode where he has 3 elements, 2 elements, and 1 element. So he's quite known for that one. And on the other side, I put it in 4. I put it in 4-1 because for the simple reason that 4 is my lucky number. I'm born on the 4th. So, for example, for James Clear, he has 3 short ideas, 2 quotes from other people, and 1 question for you. And I play a little bit around that. They put it 4 mini insights, 2 activities, more practical, and then 1 reflection. So that comes on Wednesdays. I wrote a couple of them already to have something for the next couple of weeks. And on Sundays, a bit longer episode that has to do either with the book or with parts of that. And it's a journey. And when I say habit has to do with the 4th P, partnership, accountability, I just don't write it for me. So I write it for anyone else to maybe help someone or to learn from them or to be corrected by some people. So therefore, I'm looking forward to that one. So it is, I always say writing is therapy, also for myself as a writer. And therefore, it kind of is staged and looking forward to have the exchange with the audience. So that's what I would like to do. So the launch that I do next week is on Zoom. It's digital, like a regular normal Zoom meeting, and everyone can also chat and put some kind of thoughts and questions to it. And I hope it runs with perfect audio. So therefore, I first of all, Noemi, I thank you very much for the call that we had 2 weeks ago in general about learning about more also what you are doing. And thank you for grabbing my idea, not only my idea, but for some other people who put a lovely banner. And I really like the banner that you have on your Substack, the cover image with the bubble around that really tells your branding approach, but also I like your approach of me time. So therefore, I'm learning from you and figuring out how I can add something from that also in my own newsletter. And that's what Substack is. Substack is a place where we can help each other, where we can learn from each other, where it's not about competition. There's more of us who are writing books and teaching others to do, but where we can all collaborate. And that's what I like. And that is exactly what the last P of the 4P model is about, that together we can achieve more. And that's what I strongly believe in. So thank you so much for this one. And thank you for many of you who joined, and actually some of you already know. Really like that. Thank you. Thank you.